Y'all know about the 1936 Olympics, right? Where Black American runner and long jumper Jesse Owens smoked his German rivals and embarrassed Hitler, who'd advertised these games as a way to prove conclusively that Aryans, or white Germans, were genetically superior to what he called the mixed mongrel races of American society. Well, there's a lot about it that you don't know. And this story is really touching, right? American anti-fascists triumphing over Germany, embarrassing Hitler, and Owens and his German competitor Lutz Lang creating this daring friendship that, despite Lutz's untimely death in the war, persists into the present day, right? Throughout generations among their descendants. And as an army brat with one German and one American parent, I eat this stuff up for breakfast, right? I can't get enough of this feel-good sports history that takes place in one of the world's darkest time. But I recently read this article that really challenged some of those narratives that I'd crafted for myself from trips to museums. The Berlin Olympic Stadium, where this happened, right? And the Jesse Owens Museum in his place of birth in Danville, Alabama, which, by the way, are both really well done, and you should go if you're ever in the area. However, this article by Keith Rathbone really contests that notion that the Berlin Olympic Games were populated with democratic and fascist athletes, right? We like that dichotomy a lot, but it's a false one. It really forces us to sort of forget or sweep to the side a lot of things. For starters, that America had, and still has, a lot of fascists in it who were sympathetic to Hitler's ideologies, including white supremacy, eugenics, and anti-Semitism, right? As well as the fact that Germany was full of people who didn't know they could be brave until the time came to be brave. Think about it this way, right? Owens came from a small town in Alabama where his parents were sharecropping, which is just a few steps above being enslaved. This family fled to Ohio for a better life, and when Jesse's talent was identified, he had to practice separately from the white students, right? When he broke national records as a teenager, the president refused to see him because it was an election year, and he was afraid of alienating the Southern vote by inviting a black man into the White House. He had to sit in the back of the bus, and then after this amazing moment, in 1936, where he embarrasses Hitler and helped the world see the idiocy of Nazism, he was given a ticker tape parade and then had to go back to sitting in the back of the bus, right? And racing dogs for a living. To Owens, there must not have been such a huge difference between Germany and the US, right? Well, actually, in Nazi Germany, he was allowed to sit in the front of the bus and talk to white women without fear of being hurt. Then think about Lutz, right? His German competitor and friend. Why did this blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan man agree to come to the Olympics and compete for Hitler? Was he a supporter of his government? If so, why did he then take the personal risk to walk across the field beneath Hitler's gaze and befriend the Black American pariah at the games in front of everybody? Was he actively being an anti-fascist at that moment? Or rather, did he see an equal on the field who was being treated unfairly and felt compelled to reach out? Later on in an interview, Jesse Owens said about Lutz, quote, "It took a lot of courage for him to befriend me in front of Hitler. You can melt down all the medals and cups I have, and they wouldn't be a plating on the 24-karat friendship I felt for Lutz Long at that moment. Hitler must have gone crazy watching us embrace." But does that necessarily mean that Lutz was trying to get a rise out of the Führer? Or does it mean that Lutz was exercising his right as a human to behave as athletes do when they encounter a worthy rival? See, to me, Lutz's actions feel indicative of his desire to resist politicization in sports, right? He behaved the way the best athletes do, not because he was some great anti-fascist, right? I mean, he would later die fighting for Hitler's military in Algeria. But because he was a great athlete, stuck in an extraordinary time that feels not quite so extraordinary today, right? So I ask you, can you think of any other arenas, pun intended, where people might resist politicization?